Hello friends. Thank you for joining me again today. I'm picking out the colors I want to start out with here. Let's get all official and legal here. This is Daily Art Adventure number 770. Woo! And if this for some of you might be an introduction to my watercolor technique, and I'm usually pretty careful to call it watercolor sketch technique, so as not to be confused with serious watercolor technique. All right, so I'll describe that in a minute. First of all, here's my reference. This is a wedding that I was not present at, so this is one of my after wedding paintings. A wedding evidently, and I think I was told also that took place in Sedona, Arizona. That certainly looks like Sedona. So here's the basic idea. First of all, that image and this paper are trimmed to exactly the same ratio, so that helps a great deal. So I start out in my watercolor sketch technique. I start out with watercolor pencils, and I proceed from light to dark. So the very first color, the very first marks are the lightest color I'll use, and I've chosen today to use a pink pencil instead of more typical for a watercolor technique would be for me to pick a yellow, but there's so much blue in this image. I don't want to I don't want it going green on me, even though there's quite a bit of green too, but up there where the blue is blue, I don't want it starting to look greenish at all. So this block here is the bride and the groom together. I'm going to make a significant change. I'll show you the reference again here in a little while. I'm going to make a significant change for some reason in the photograph that I'm copying. The groomsmen here appear, they're closer to the viewer, so they appear quite a bit taller than the bride and groom, and so I'm going to make them smaller. So here's two bridesmaids in a box, bride and groom and preacher in a box, and two more. You can do this any number of ways, and then in the background, I don't have to capture these or reproduce these mountains, these rock formations exactly, of course, but I want to get a pretty good copy, because I'm quite sure the bride and groom will, compare to some degree, compare my drawing to their photograph. They have the photograph. Anyway, don't want it to look like, definitely want it to look like Sedona, Arizona, which my wife and I have been to just in the last year or so. We have a son living in Flagstaff, son, wife, and baby girl living in Flagstaff. Okay, so with the very palest of colors, I outline or block in the very largest of shapes. Now let's divide this into, there's a bride and there's a groom. When I'm teaching my drawing class, I think for many students, this is one of the things that surprises them the most. For people who've not taken a drawing class before, and I stand in front of the class. Maybe you've watched me do this on one of my videos. And sometimes I'll put my hands over my head, spread my legs apart, and put my hands over my head and say, "What's the largest shape you see?" And a non-artist will say, "Your torso." you know, your chest, stomach, whatever, torso. And the answer is no, no, no. The largest shape you see is a big V formed by my hands and a big upside down V, or A, formed by my legs. That is to say, as artists, we learn to see trans shapes. I use that term that in other ways in my painting, but it applies to this as well. We because when you want to capture something realistically, you start with the big shapes to get those in the right place. Well, that's a hard lesson most of us had to learn the hard way in somewhere along the line, School of Hard Knocks. It's like, whoops, I should have started with big shapes. And again, that often means trans shapes. So that just I want to point out again. So I put the two bridesmaids in one box, bride and groom in another box, and two groomsmen in another box. That helps me get, and the first line I put down, let me show you my reference again. I'm not going to pick it up, but there it is. I hope you can see it somewhat. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at a good deal. So that's probably enough for the pink. Now, here's part of the trick, my trick for doing these sketches is then go to a next darker color and make corrections and refinements. Is this the height? I'm asking myself, is this the right height for the groom? This is an older couple getting married, evidently. And what's the curve of his back? Very important to get that right. It has and with this particular wedding painting, I will not be doing a portrait per se of the bride and groom. This will be a little bit more abstract, trying to capture the essence of the moment and the day, the atmosphere, not worrying so much about precise facial features. I've done, let me show you this to you a little bit more closely now that I'm holding it. I modified, they sent me a photograph. I approved of it, if you will, said, yeah, I can work with that. And then modified it a notable amount in Photoshop. One of the main things I did is I moved the preacher. Look at the angle of the woman's arms. Exactly right. Yeah, looks about right. I moved the preacher, made him smaller, fainter. I just actually turned him into a Photoshop layer and reduced his opacity to about 60%, so he's actually fading into the background, and made him slightly smaller and tucked him behind the groom. So I moved, because the preacher was very prominent. There were three heads right here, boom, boom, boom. And I communicated with my client. I guessed correctly that the officiant was not, in fact, a friend of the family, just the hired gun for the day. So didn't want the painting to be about him. So then I did a number of other things too, including, I brought the bride and groom closer together than they were in the original photograph, and put a shadow then of the of the shadow of the groom onto the bride's dress. So some of what, like that shadow is manufactured, if you will. Hi, Uncle 60. Oh, a bunch of people saying hi. Hey, Jane. El Juanito Casalanan. I hope you learned something here too. Thank you for joining us, Juanito. And Marco Petroni, leaving us. Marco is leaving us, probably. In Italy, it's getting late. And Brenda, right? Don't be fooled by the Michael Van Dusen. Uncle 60, cataract surgery. Well, I hope it goes very well. Indeed. I am going to also move the flower pots a little bit. Aha, this girl right here, she looks like a daughter of the bride. That's just a guess. They may both be daughters, but this girl here favors the bride in her face considerably. That's just, again, just a guess on my part. I was not at the wedding. I've talked about this before a little bit, but in doing wedding paintings and doing brides and grooms, everybody gets a little, I'll be funny and say a tummy tuck. It's not really that. Everybody gets elongated a little bit. I want to elongate them just enough so they don't necessarily notice or think. If they go, oh my God, you made me skinny, then I've missed my target. Okay, I don't want that kind of reaction. But I would like them to look at it and go, oh, I look pretty good in that picture. in America, for better or worse, for right or wrong. Since most Americans are overweight, in America, looking good means I look thin in that photograph. So again, everybody gets a little bit of a elongation. I'd rather say I elongate the figures. It's more accurate than to say I make them skinny. Although technically, it'd be the same thing, really. Sorry. I am indeed fighting a cold. Haven't been coughing too much, so I hope I don't start now. Okay, so the color I'm doing now is orange, and shortly here I will be switching to a darker color. The wedding party is clearly standing on some kind of patio, pavement, pavers, large pavers, I think. No, it could be fake wood. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I think it is. I think it's some of that vinyl wood stuff, fake wood. But there's a railing, a fence behind them, and I think, oh, you know what? This would be a good time. I don't think I want to be tricky or fancy or anything. I think I just want a railing that goes right straight across. So, time for my friend the T-square. Doesn't work if your T-square slides while you're working. That kind of ruins the point. I don't know how long this broadcast will last. It's fairly late in the afternoon here, and I expect my wife to come home after a long day of running various and sundry errands. She'll be coming home, and then shortly after that we'll probably break for supper. So we'll see. I'll get as much done as I can. But let me tell you where I'm going from here. Just, I know people need to come and go when I'm doing these broadcasts, so you can't necessarily catch the whole thing. This whole approach to doing watercolors, I have no idea where it came from. I mean, I didn't learn it from somebody. I don't even know how I developed it or when. I do know that I produced a video with Jerry's Artorama about 10 years ago where I demonstrated this technique. So 10 years ago, it was evidently already for me enough of an established technique that 10 years ago I could do a video teaching on it. So anyway, here's what it is. As you see, I'm starting with watercolor pencils. So right off the bat, this is not acceptable into, Watercolor Society of America. That kind of relieves me of a lot of pressure. I don't have to try to pretend I'm doing something that I'm not doing, if that makes sense to you. I'm not trying to be super serious. This is a fun, quick technique. But 2 years ago, I actually did a side-by-side demo on one of my early daily art adventures, way back in January or February, March of 2017. I did a side-by-side where I did 2 watercolors, both of big old Victorian houses, if I remember correctly. And one of the houses, one of the watercolors I did in traditional watercolor, just no opaque, no pen and ink, no watercolor pencil, just a little bit of graphite and then a whole bunch of watercolor. And then I did the other one in this technique. And I wanted to get an opinion from my viewers about which one they liked better. And it was split pretty close to 50-50, which was good enough for me. That meant that people, generally speaking, just as many people liked my this technique just as well as the traditional. Now, why does it matter? Well, because this technique is about, I would say, 3 times faster than traditional. So this is, and which certainly makes sense because I had spent so much of my career as an illustrator, and illustrators are always looking for shortcuts. So again, I don't know where I developed it, but probably back in my illustration days somewhere. You may notice that I haven't done any kind of grid. I'm also working from very small reference, which I have found is actually, especially like with portraiture, working from a small reference. Let me show you this. So, am I on the screen? Yeah, okay, so let me show you this. Here's one of the benefits of a Droid that, at least until recently, they may have improved now, but an iPhone could not do this. Let me show you what. Here's what an iPhone could do. It could go from that to about that. Do you understand? It could only blow up so much. Now you could jerry-rig it, you could trick it, and you could upload additional apps. But anyway, just right out of the box, the Android allows you to blow up a lot farther. So that's plenty big enough. When I blow it up, it's plenty large enough for the details of this painting. But the point I want to make right now is not that, but it's instead, I'm not going to do a grid. Of course, Duh, I would have done one already if I were. You don't do a grid after the drawing normally. Anyway, I'm not going to do a grid, and I'm just sort of flying by the seat of my pants, so to speak. That's an expression here in America about doing something without too much planning ahead. And I debated doing a grid and thought, no, I'm going to hopefully trust my intuition that I'm putting the image on the page in a pleasing manner. Checking the horizontal of that, and I think it's okay down there. Okay, 2 colors down. The third color I picked out, whoops, it fell back into the box. So let's see, what did I pick out? I believe it was a blue, but kind of a little bit of a pale-ish blue. What do they call it? Prussian blue. Well, Prussian is the opposite of pale. Here's a good tip for you watercolor, anybody new to watercolor. This is a piece of the same paper. I cut this paper down to size. This is nice 300-pound paper, which I certainly prefer. You know what? That is darker than I want. So let's look for a paler blue here. But you can test. And you could test everything. I've tested my ink already, now my watercolor pencil, and I could test some watercolor colors if I wanted to. Anyway, that's just a good idea to, whenever possible, to have a piece of the exact paper that you want to paint on, have a piece of scrap that you can test on. I guess maybe this will do. Now I'm debating whether I want to do blue next or purple. I probably only need to do one more color and then proceed to watercolor and painting. So hang on just a second. I'm rethinking this here. Blue or purple? I really feel like purple is more what I'm in the mood for. And I'm wondering now. Now let me stay in my drawing mode or sketch mode. At some point here, I will turn over. I'll change my grip. Also change camera, tripod holder, and I'll do details like this: the control grip, the traditional grip. I'm doing all my drawing with one hand, which I often do not do when I'm doing a watercolor live at a wedding. But there I've got a different a little bit different, a little more freedom with my easel. I didn't want to be bothered setting it up here today, so. Switching grips here just for a minute to get the groom's collar. There we go. You can see I'm blowing up the image of the groom a little bit. Getting this angle in the back in his suit coat, the profile of his tux or suit jacket is very important for capturing a likeness. Sorry about my throat, folks. For some reason, the way this photograph caught the man's caught the man's stance here, his slacks seem to be considerably shorter than they ought to be. I will do him the favor. I think I just happened to catch him wrong. I'll do the favor of giving him proper length. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. Okay. Bride's face, I've got that angle right. Interrupt it with a bit of a nose. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes, I guess often, I should say, when I'm forcing myself to use my left hand, I often feel like I'm seeing the image more accurately, which that might just be some kind of interpersonal folklore, urban legend. But it feels like that to me. It feels like, when I'm drawing with my right hand, which has a mind of its own, of course, and it's very skilled, my right hand can draw really well. It's almost like, I don't know, it goes into autopilot, and I'm not sure that I trust what I'm seeing quite as well when I'm working with my left hand. And I don't know if there's anything to this at all. I don't know if this, like I said, if this is just some, but it does feel that way. Even when I'm doing this here, I feel like I'm looking more carefully and critically. Okay. Preacher is looking down. I'm going to make him look down even a little bit more, because I want to keep him minimal in the scene. He's there, but I don't want anybody to pay any attention to him. So I haven't spelled this out, but I'm assuming that you're seeing and understanding that as I redraw this scene, the image, in progressively darker colors of colored pencil, that the earlier, not quite as dark marks essentially disappear. And that's part of the method to my madness, if you will. That Did I finish that sentence? Did I leave one dangling? You got the idea. This girl right here, she looks like the sun is painful in her eyes. So her gaze is cast downward. It looks like one of those, ooh, don't make me look at you. The sun is hurting my eyes. This might be one of those videos that would be kind of fun to do a time lapse. I could show people myself doing a wedding painting from my studio after the wedding, from a photograph. Hey, Izzy.
Are you going to eat with us?
I don't know. Are you all about ready to eat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just setting the table.
Okay. Probably, although start without me because I'm broadcasting right now, okay? That's all right. A little tiny bit of a breeze blowing, evidently. So my sense is it's always hot in Sedona. So a little bit of breeze would be a welcome thing. But I can tell by one of the dresses is caught a little bit of a breeze, so lucky for them. Oh, I never did, again, for any newcomers here. So what comes next after doing the watercolor pencil? One of two things happens. Either I do some pen and ink, and I have two kinds of pens here. One is a fountain pen with a refillable cartridge, and the other is a manufactured felt tip pen without refillable cartridge, so it doesn't last very long. But the fountain pen, I can create a more expressive line because I can vary the pressure on the pen, which then creates a varied width of line, fatness, thickness of line. So that's why I generally prefer the fountain pen for drawing. But sometimes, okay, so after the I started to say after the this watercolor pencil, I either go to pen and ink or go straight to watercolor and then do the pen and ink after the watercolor, which is I'm assuming for most of you, is counterintuitive. In other words, most people would think, I think, most people would think that you would do all the lines first, all the line work first, and then do the watercolor. But sometimes I do that, but sometimes I don't. And the reason sometimes I don't is because doing the watercolor next lets me create a little bit more free and loose and fun watercolor. I'm not as concerned about staying in the line, so to speak, although to tell you the truth, I think that's such a minimal temptation for me. I'm pretty much allergic to staying in the lines. Okay, hang on just a minute. This guy's arms are too long. Let's fix that. Thank you. So we'll see. I do it different each time. I don't know whether I'm going to do watercolor next or pen and ink next. There. I'm fairly happy with that. Those rough renderings of the people. Now let's finish up some of the iconic rock formations there in Sedona. These rocks look just like old-timey 1950s and 60s Western cowboy shows, spaghetti westerns they're often called around here, because they were actually produced so often in Italy. Anyway, it looks like classic cowboy. Except when I was a kid, of course, we never saw any color. It was all in black and white. So. Notice the very careful, I'm being facetious, rendering of the pickets or the staves in the fence. Carefulness will come later. All right, shadows. Oh, is there anything? Oh yeah, I want to do a little bit of a shadow, a little bit, at least something down here. There's too much empty space down there. Another option open to me at this moment is sometimes I do is a masking fluid. But you know what? I think this is the perfect time. Hello, Susan. I sound sick? Yes, I do. And David, I must have some painting drying. Where are you drawing? That scratchy throat is coming from. Yeah. No, it's just a cold. I do have paintings drying downstairs, far away from me. Okay, David's got a tip. The left side person, the arm from her shoulder to elbow is too long. You might be right. I'm not going to redraw it now. I'll fix it in pen and ink if yeah, compared to her. But she might be too short, see? Anyway, never mind. I think probably I should just stop right there in this broadcast and go eat with the family. And then come back and finish later. I'll do that. Thank you guys, all you crazy regulars, for your fun company. Appreciate it. So I will end the broadcast and start a new one later. So if you want to catch me, then you can. It's a good start. Good enough. Good enough for watercolor pencil. So you understand, I'm sure, that then when I put watercolor water on this painting, these pencils re-enliven, re-wet, right? Here, since I'm drawing David, I will go ahead and shorten that a little bit. That's part of the fun of this technique, is the colors that bleed through. All right, good enough. I'm rambling. I'll say goodbye. Thanks, guys. See you, Susan. See you all. Bye-bye.